Now 8:01, call this meeting of the Municipal Building Committee to order for September 26th, 24. Is anybody here for open forum? Seeing none, we'll move on. Review of the minutes from 9/12/24. Do we have a motion?
I'll move their approval.
I'll second that.
Okay. Any comments, corrections? Everything looked fine to me when I saw it. Okay, all those in favor? Unanimous? Okay. Move on to the country club.
Good morning, Arthur Love
morning.
with BFE Architects. I think today we have folks from New England Restaurant Group or Consulting to kind of talk about themselves and how we could help visualize a restaurant tenant for what we've done on the studies and kind of their recommendations and helping with the lease and all the capabilities that folks like these would bring to the table. I have the plans for reference if this is hooked up, if we need them, but so I don't know if the screens are on. Yep, they are. All right. But I'll turn it over to Paul and Mike. Sure. And if you guys want to just swap in.
Sure. My name is Paul Toronto. This is Mike Demersky.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Where do you want to start?
So,
Wait,
Yeah.
go ahead.
yeah, so, I think in terms, and anybody on the committee, correct me if I'm wrong, but, we basically want to be able to support a restaurant with this project, but we want it not to come out of the town's coffers. I think we have a certain portion of the building that the town's responsible for, which will be the golf club. But I think it's ultimately important that we have a restaurant group in that can support the rest of the construction and the build out of the restaurant. So the important thing I think for us is to understand how we find that restaurant. What are the numbers associated with that to make it work? We received some preliminary budget numbers at our last meeting, and I'm not sure that they can support a restaurant. So I think, in my mind, the important thing for us to figure out right now is what's the budget that this project can support, and then what do we need to do to design it? And I think our design team has done a great job of giving us a couple options, but unless we know that this can literally pencil out, then we really don't have a project.
Yeah, I'd say the other thing is what we've talked about and what they've even put in costing is, kind of what we do as a town in terms of outfitting and what you would leave for a restaurant to come in. So it's, kind of rough putting in a kitchen, but not, for example, we would not buy all the equipment, having tables and chairs and maybe not even doing finished painting because they're going to want to put their colors. But I think just giving us we don't know what we don't know. I mean, we're not restaurant experts. We've had restaurants there before, some good, some bad, and I think it's just understanding that whole thing. So maybe some of it about kind of what you guys have done, but I do think that the other piece is, we want something to come in there that as we look to build this, and we know that we will initially basically go out and finance it, or maybe there's been talk about public-private partnerships as well, or so kind of leaning on you guys for expertise, giving us your thoughts and what we should think about that we probably aren't thinking about.
Sure.
Can I go back to one of your comments? So you said you had some initial budget estimates that you're not sure will support a restaurant?
Excuse me for 1 second. If you could just speak into the mic so
sorry,
they can catch this on the TV.
Hi. You made a comment about some budget estimates that didn't seem to connect with logic at some point on running it?
We don't know. That's why we
It's expensive.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you have someone, so
Maybe just to back up, I appreciate that. A little bit about your company and what
Sure.
you do.
Yeah.
And
Do you want to say what Mr.?
So Paul and I started collaborating a year or so ago. We've known each other for 20 years. I've been on the restaurant design side for that long, but prior to that, I was a chef running restaurants, developing concepts all throughout New England. So that's what I do. I've done major projects, small projects, you name it, country clubs, casinos, hotels, mom and pop bakeries, concessions, local country clubs as well. So I'm a food service specialist for equipment and design, and also the concept and project development. And Paul, you know, he and I partnered. His forte from running restaurants, he's geared more towards the operations and the P&L, which I've done in the past. But a lot of times that hurts my head because I'm more of the creative guy. So, you know, Paul brings that expertise to the table as far as his operational aspect, although I've developed inventories and P&Ls and had to be responsible for all that throughout the years, so.
Yeah, so I've owned 5 restaurants. I've built out 4 from scratch, you know, ground up. I just got out 2 years ago, and during that time I was doing consulting, and I also, I'm a licensed real estate agent. So I do commercial. I basically help broken restaurants. I try and fix them or I sell them. So I'm, you know, I'm a chef by trade. It's what I've done for 25 years. And I just recently built out a hockey arena with a boarding school. So I did all the design, layout, purchasing. I oversee it as a contractor. And I've worked in country clubs. I've been working for myself for 25 years. So you know, I'm kind of newly paired up with Mike because we have similar philosophies. I think we work well together, and yeah, and there's, you know, that's.
So the other comment you made was if you're looking for someone to run it, like a food service contract management company, or would it be overseen by someone at the town level? You know, how do you foresee that? Because the design, what these folks put together are some solid options. You know, Paul and I discussed what we see might generate more revenue with less confusion as far as the operational aspect of it, and give you more P&L control for the venues, if you will, because you have a golf course, right? And you do a lot of rounds there, and you need quick food service. So a concession-style pub at the golf course level, right? And then maybe you want that fine dining aspect on the upper level to cater to Chamber of Commerce or functions and events and weddings that would necessitate some type of sales manager, function manager in that food service management group. And then it would either be percentage of gross sales, right, or contract fee, food management contract fee, which when I worked for Northeastern and ran their conference centers, you know, we were part of that DACA, which was that management fee situation. So there's a couple different approaches that could fit into any of their designs. It's just a matter of, I guess, backing it up to the budget. You know, when you say that you can build the building, make the sandbox, but someone else has to come in with the finances to equip it, you know, that's also somewhat of a substantial commitment for someone that is on a contract. You know, they'll have skin in the game, but if they have to buy everything and supply something that could be $300,000 or $400,000, you know, that's a pretty significant investment to have to review a lease or review a contract yearly based on town government.
Yeah.
So Ian, correct me if I'm wrong, but what we've done in the past as a town has been a 10-year lease.
It's been a 10-year, but I think
Sure.
it's negotiable, and I think that's something,
But
you know, to
usually-
be discussed, because it could be, you know, I think those are the things to look at. I mean, I think if our town manager was
spreading
here,
the
but we could do
investment.
something that, I think we've talked, it could be, depending on what we do, we could be a 15 or
Right, so
20 yearly. I mean, I think we can be flexible. Typically, it's been 10. I think the other thing to say is the way it has worked in the past, I'm not saying it has to, it's really been overseen by the town, but really it's been leased out to a restaurant
Sure.
who
Yep.
basically runs it according to a contract
Sure.
with the
So-
town, but
so-
they kind of on their
Right.
own.
So that being said, the lease is a critical component of it, right? And Paul can speak more to that with his current, you know, experience. I think the lease is less significant than the upfront investment, because a lot of times, the facilities that I've done over time, usually the equipment is supplied, and they look for an operator that leases it pretty much fully furnished. with a concept that you drive, right? So you have a question?
Yeah, well, I think that the reason why we're starting with that point is we don't really know what a restaurant's going to want in there for equipment. We don't know what kind of stoves, what kind of equipment.
So that's our job.
So we do, yeah. So we could help like land the plane. We could build this for, for the concept that we're talking about. We could build it. We could oversee the project with the architects. We could lead you to the water. We could advise on the best way to do the lease or the contract. It basically, we would build this as if we were running it ourselves.
Right, so that's a great point. And to these folks, their design, we chatted on a couple of calls about the versatility of their design. And like I said earlier, being operations and chefs, we need to know that, yes, you want banquet, yes, you want a la carte, yes, you want pub style concession for the golf course. So all of those venues, these folks did a great job of providing those parts and pieces in the sandbox. And then Paul and I know what it would take to run each piece, and then we can develop an operational feasibility study, P&L, labor study, prime costs, all of those other spreadsheets that are generated from that base concept. And then it's a matter of, we put together the package for you with the equipment costs, because we can provide the equipment and the costs. We can manage the equipment delivery and installation and training and startups and demos if we get that far. And if you want, once we put the package together, we can help you interview operators to say, hey, what's your concept? Do a tasting menu. Can you handle conference and events and not crash the a la carte kitchen and still supply the golf course when you have a lot of rounds? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. And I think just, I think you have it. I mean, the golf course, remember, is a 9-hole. So but it's not kind of. We've talked about concessions, quick stuff going by, but also the rounds and bar. I will say though that the way it's viewed as a community, it's been a community restaurant too, and that's what we got from our surveys. The folks in town and the surrounding towns support it as a restaurant. So while we have, and I think we've been flexible in the design we've seen with the banquet facilities. It's not huge banquet facilities, roughly 75.
Yeah, but it fits the demographic, right?
But I think it's also, having that ability to have, non-golfers
Yeah.
dining there both. And I think we looked at it with some of the designs of, having a variety menu. The last restaurant group that was in there did it and, was successful. I believe. I mean, it's successful in the eyes of the consumers, people coming in.
So
but I think,
there's a way to do that, right? So with the lower level in one of their concepts, the bar, the pub, the golf course, right? The quick concession, the pub menu, so that when you have leagues come in later at night, you can get them and capture revenue more successfully without interfering with maybe a family dining situation or a banquet upstairs. And those multiple revenue generating streams, I think, which one of their concepts kind of connected with Paul and I, because of labor, right, efficiency, but also because of the mixed demographic that you might want in at any certain time, because maybe the golf club folks in the pub might be too loud for a family to come in and have a nice dinner upstairs, or a function or event running at the same time. And that's from my experience running conference centers for Northeastern. You can't crash an a la carte dining room or hotels while you want to put out a function. So, and Paul's done a lot of that as well.
We could also market the space, I think is what we were asking too. We could also, like on the real estate side, we could put together the whole marketing plan to market to get that operator in here. That's probably what you're afraid of, I'm assuming, or no one wants to deal with. And then kind of guide you on something reasonable on both sides to get a deal done.
So,
Can
have-
I add one thing?
Sure, go ahead.
One thing also is that, again, as we kind of complete our feasibility study and we have the two options, as much as Lauren and I and our team back at BFE have been in restaurants and stuff, we are not restaurant experts. And to the fact that we have a building, we allocated kind of conceptual spaces, but these guys and you all are going to tell us, you know what, when they put a seating chart together, this is a little bit oversized, and maybe we can take back some of the building, which equals savings on cost of making it smaller. We like it looks good, and we work together, you guys and us to kind of get us here, but really having somebody with an expertise. Is our kitchen too small? Do we have enough freezer space? Like, those are the questions that kind of, once it gets in here, we can then massage and finalize the plan and kind of, so there's, as much as they're gonna do all the back stuff, there's still a little bit more work to do to kind of get us comfortable with the estimates, because it's just estimates. It's not a final design. It's very conceptual, but that's part of the process at the beginning, and then working with these guys to kind of hone in on what the final design is, because we've got rough occupancy numbers that can drop, or we were talking last time, the deck gets bigger. So there's still, I just wanted to tidbit that as these guys are jumping in on this footprint, so to speak, but
Sure.
it could still change.
And like he says, what they put together, Paul and I connected with right away in both options, if you will, right? Because you have a full liquor license, so you want to generate revenue from the golfers and/or the pub style menu, which is easy for Paul and I to make a conceptual menu with food cost and P&L projections based on check average and, guest count, right? And your turnover. And then in the off season, the fine dining and the banquets could support, whatever you need to support to offset the costs of losing the golf for the season. So there's a lot of parts and pieces on their efficiencies of design. But again, if you guys want to say you want to do functions for 100 people, well, we need to look at that space. The bar and the pub and the concession, piece of cake. That's part of the golf course venue. And like I say, and then there's the fine dining aspect, whether it's white tablecloth or just dining. I don't mean to pigeonhole it in fine dining, but, a nice dining room where a family could come in and dovetail with the golf crowd and not be, afraid of the noise and, all of that stuff. So that ties into their functional design. Does it make sense?
Yep.
Do you guys have any numbers for what the actual restaurants in the past have done, or was it very separate? Did you collect any data? We have a flow of the golf.
No,
So there's no numbers.
Very separate. We got our lease payment
And what was the lease payment on the last one?
it was very minimal because of the way that we structured the lease was
Yeah.
that there was an upfront capital investment. So it was like
Did you take a percentage of sales, or is it
No.
just a lease you rented?
it was
the
just
space?
this.
Just someone to take it
Yeah.
over and,
And I
deal
wouldn't,
with
I wouldn't hang on what we did before.
Yeah,
so I'm
sure,
not
sure.
It was.
Did the pro shop, so typically some of the pro shops in country clubs or public golf courses, usually the pro shop or the golf pro has, a percentage of whether it's the beverage cart or the house at the turn or the pub sales related to golf leagues and things
No.
like that. So there's an option to build in some component there to help the town generate more revenue versus just a lease.
The golf shop, Matt Griffin, the golf pro, he it's a 9-hole course, so it's
Yeah.
not a lot to manage.
Sure.
What they had previously was a lot more space than he just underutilized, so their pro shop kind of got a little bit more condensed. And he doesn't want to have any operational control of the concession.
That's good.
It would kind of be like a
Yeah.
symbiotic relationship.
Yeah, and just, so what we've done is we've changed how historically we had run the golf course under a contract with the pro. We switched
So
that
it
over,
managed
so
the
the
leagues,
pro
et cetera.
now is actually a town employee.
Okay.
Okay.
So in that sense, it's not kind of him driving, and I don't think he wants to. I'm looking at Jen.
Yeah.
He does not want, and Jen doesn't want as his boss to oversee him, driving revenue himself. I think he wants to run it. I think he wants to run a golf course as well as he could, and he knows that
Sure.
golfers like the amenities of being able to get a drink on the course or come in afterwards and, talk about the round, have a burger.
So
just
are
whatever.
beverages, alcohol allowed on the course? Do you have beverage cart service, or does it all come to the clubhouse and go back out?
We don't currently have cart service.
Okay. Is that something?
But alcohol is allowed on the course, it just can't be served by the town. but we allowed the last vendor to,
Right.
That's better for an operator anyway.
Yeah.
I mean,
So do you know, so they did not have a beverage cart?
They
I mean,
did
it's a 9-hole course, so I don't
They
think.
did it,
We
but they
didn't-
could.
The liquor license wasn't structured to include the course until close to the end of their lease, and so.
Yeah, so, you know.
but it could. I mean, so the point is, we could have a beverage cart, we could have a,
Yeah, so if that's in the marketing plan, you know, at least something like that could entice more so someone to have some other revenue streams generated when the leagues are in, because I played in golf leagues and, you know, still play a few rounds of golf, but,
Yep.
you know, that also helps keep the flow and the pressure off of the deck or the concession stand when everybody's making their turn if they choose to play 18 versus just the 9.
but I would imagine it helps with a lease
Yeah,
too,
they-
because they're looking at their
more
revenue.
options.
Yeah, absolutely,
more
that
options.
extra revenue,
Yeah.
right. And that's when I, you know, alluded to a function sales manager, because in the off-season, you want to have the restaurant upstairs and maybe even the pub with multiple activities still going on, and, you know, team building or whatever else you might want to do.
I do know too that is another benefit, that property, even in the wintertime, gets utilized by quite a bit of the town.
That's great.
If it snows.
Sure.
Because it's a, I don't know if you've seen the course.
Cross country.
It's Hills and
The
there's.
sledding
cross-country.
hills, yeah.
Skiers,
Yep.
there's families that go there and slide and.
So hot
They're always
chocolate
looking for.
and events
yeah.
like that, sure,
Yeah, so-
absolutely.
I think this is
We
in
don't
a,
support those. I mean, that's all I.
I'm sorry?
It's liability.
I think this is an attractive deal for an operator to do. It's just I think the question is, where do you stop and where does the operator take it over? I mean, I think the messy part is, you know, the hood system. Maybe the painting, you know, you might be better off, like, to take it a little bit further and pick it back up on the lease than to wait for the operator, because A, you don't want to get stuck with no tables and chairs if it doesn't work out, or people ripping out equipment if, God forbid, it doesn't work out. At
has
least you own it, and they're paying just a higher lease payment to use the equipment that you put in, and then we together kind of do the layout and design so that it's versatile and it works. I think that's usually the best way to do it. Otherwise, you're waiting for, you know, we're negotiating hood systems and who's paying for this, who's paying for that.
And
it
then what
gets-
style of cuisine, et cetera, you know?
So here's the kicker, in my mind. The town cannot build cost-effectively. A developer, restaurateur can build more cost-effectively
Yeah.
than the town.
Yeah,
So-
I agree.
So that's the difficulty.
Yeah.
So I think in our mind, or my mind, I should say, you know, we build the shell. If we had to give the restaurateur an allowance to build something out,
Yeah.
we'd be better off doing something like that.
Well, I
than
think that's
trying
what's
to-
helping us with the P and L.
Yeah.
Does that work? Does it
But
hurt
that-
us? Whatever,
So that takes a lot of time, and again, like Paul's trying to express, when you give someone the keys to the kingdom to say, hey, here's a space, fit it out with your concept and your, you know, a menu, they may get the concept, they may get a menu, but it's gonna take a lot longer once that
Yeah.
shell is built. You know what I mean? It's like a furnished apartment versus non-furnished.
Yeah.
You know, so if you can understand that expense, which Paul and I with the team will pick an option for you and say, look, maybe we go with the new construction option and we design the venues in there with the equipment, the budget, the tables and chairs, you know, an expense, an allowance for small wares, which are glassware, plates, china, all the tools for the kitchen, et cetera. We can give you that package, right? With the equipment labeled and a full sheet of, you know, here's your shopping list. Now you can present it to a wider audience because it's already there. All they have to do is hire the staff and cook the menu that you guys want or that they want that fits your concept. If, you know, I've done projects for Raytheon where, you know, a food service company runs everything, but Raytheon buys everything. And like to Paul said, who takes the equipment if their contract is up? Now you've got to find someone to come in and buy new equipment to put in that may or may not fit your theme, and it's a more complicated dovetailing. Does that make sense?
And on the mechanical side, to do the drawings, it's messy. It's hard because if someone says, you know, all the power changes, it's not like you can just swap refrigerator for refrigerator. It all has to be laid out in the plans to get real accurate numbers so it doesn't get out of whack. That's why we prefer to, you know, it's better probably for you,
For the marketing.
someone to take the flight plan and just kind of keep going, and then you pick it up on the lease side in order to keep if you want to get the process to continue to move.
Right,
Otherwise, you get hung up.
So
So one
some,
of-
go ahead.
One of the things, I just want to comment on that. So one of the things I'm concerned about is, so if the town puts up the initial cost and buys all the equipment and tables, everything, so what happens once the restaurant moves in as far as maintenance goes? Now, if
Great-
those
great question.
stoves need maintenance, if the
Yeah.
hood needs maintenance,
Yep. That falls on the
The town
operator.
does not want to be
Yeah.
responsible.
No, that,
No, that falls on the operator.
Sure.
That all, so, yeah, so we'd probably, you'd have a cam in there too for the outside, the
Yep.
exterior. And then the operator would pick up everything once you put it in a restaurant, they give you maybe the duct work, maybe the
Right.
HVAC, you go in and build it out. In this situation,
a
you
little
just.
bit of a gray area.
Yeah, it's a little, yeah.
So like
yeah.
the structural things, right? Like maybe grease traps or major plumbing or major electrical
Yeah.
or major HVAC, right?
Yeah.
That might be, to Paul's comment, in the fine print. But the operational equipment, the stoves or refrigerators, the parts and pieces in there,
Moves with
that
the space.
expense is totally owned by the food service operations team.
to
As far
maintain.
as, and even fire protection, maintenance, you have to have inspections, all
Yeah, yeah,
of that
that's
stuff.
all- yeah, that-
All of that would be
When
through.
you say fire protection, though, that's part of the building,
The build
right?
out, yeah.
So like, again, if I'm equating it to leasing an apartment or a condo, there's something that is the HOA responsibility, right? That you have to manage because it's the building versus what the operational piece of the restaurant within it.
Okay, so all those costs then would be built into the lease, basically. I mean, we're gonna cover the
and
costs.
detailed and all explained thoroughly, and that's the way Paul can help structure that document,
Yep.
because we happen to be working on a project that's very similar to this, and, it's complicated. Again, I'm gonna go back to, if you give them an open space, then it might take a lot longer to find someone, and then it takes 6 months to get it operational, right?
Yeah.
And then, again, who owns the equipment if you don't like them, or when the lease is up, and then you gotta start all over, versus if you supply everything, and you say, hey, come, look at this beautiful restaurant we have for you, here's what we wanna do, here's the revenue that we're targeting based on some P&L projections, right? And then someone could come in with an investment to help offset some of the expense. Maybe there's $100,000,
Key money.
whatever, key money that, they buy into the project that way. And then there's a way to negotiate that with some of the profits or lease expense, et cetera.
Does the town have any interest in that? Like in a percentage of sales or anything
Yes.
like
Yes.
that?
I think
Oh, you do?
we're open to, yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, we should talk about cost when they're done.
All right. We have a special town meeting coming up, the middle of October. We've got an article we're going to be putting on, so we're going to be looking for costs that will be associated with the type of services that you're willing to, or you have offered. Do you have an estimate on what
It-
that would be?
It's actually included.
You-
in the
it was
estimate
included
that
in
we
your
got from
numbers.
BFA,
Okay.
yeah.
So we had,
But we do need to go out to bid, so.
Right.
Yeah,
I'm
so this
sorry,
is just
you
an
need the what?
estimate. Go out to bid.
So we have our phases in there based on the scope that you want or don't want, and we can fine tune it, accordingly. As far as the initial design, right, with the equipment and based on one of the floor plans that you select, right, which we still are leaning towards the new construction. If you don't want to consider the new construction, we can include that in our proposal to go back into the remodel. But based on our discussions and evaluations, we think there's more opportunity for flexible revenue streams that don't conflict with each other in the new construction. But you folks are gonna guide the plane or the ship to, pick your budget on that.
And as we get the numbers, on the construction, if we work together, as we get the numbers on the construction, we price it with the equipment, and then we could probably, it would be easier to come back to you with a deal, a proposed deal of like, hey, this sounds reasonable based on this kind of investment. Right now, we just kind of fly blind, like, what's this lease gonna cost? How are we gonna get our money back? Once we have numbers, we put together a plan for
Okay.
you.
I think that's what we're looking for, because we just don't have any.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
When it's,
I mean, and I don't know if you can respond, but, I talked to a broker who does restaurants.
Yep.
And said, what sort of revenue do you think this would generate? So I'd be curious,
Yeah.
back of the napkin, what numbers in your mind?
So it's very interesting that you asked that question. So I did a hockey arena, and I did so this hockey arena is, it's a boarding school, 125 kids live there, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and then there's the rink. So we went through it. I'm like, how are we going to figure out who's coming here? And they're like, we have these skills. You just break it down. There's 270 to 325 people flowing through the golf through the season. That's all we know. The rest of it we don't know, so we just basically we start with that. It's a lot of guesswork because we start with that and say out of these 300 people a day, we can assume that X, just from the industry standard, X number of people are going to spend this.
It's based on a menu projection.
Yeah,
too,
based
right?
on the menu, based on
That's how we get that.
concessions, based on bottles of,
So
Gatorade.
let me give you my numbers and you react.
Yeah,
How's that?
sure.
So he said $2 to $2.5 million a year in revenue.
That doesn't sound outrageous to me, and that doesn't sound high or low. It sounds about
And then,
probably, yeah.
in his opinion, the rent on a revenue like that would be about 6%.
6% is in industry standard. That's
So
industry
we're
standard.
talking $120,000 to $150,000 a year in lease payments.
Yep.
And what sort of construction can that support? And that's where I'm starting to question whether
So
we have a
construction-
viable project. What sort of project costs can that support?
So again, I'm not a contractor.
I am.
There you go.
Oh, there you go.
So,
Then build this
so
cheaper.
I
so,
wish I could.
so if you know the construction costs,
Well, we have an estimate. We have an estimate from the architect already.
right, so we can supply the food service equipment package cost. And
That really drives, I think, the next part of this conversation when we're done talking about this is how we're gonna pay for it.
Right.
Yeah.
Christie is our town manager.
so when you say it's going out to bid, is what our scope and their scope still going out to bid?
We're required to
Sure.
bring an OPM on
Sure.
board, which we haven't done yet, and then we have to go through the designer selection laws, so,
Sure.
yes, so it has to go out to bid.
So back to what we bring to the table, right? Based on what you already have in your pocket, the conceptual plan, one or two versions, right? And then with our scope, we can offer the food service equipment design, right? That fits into their plan, that fits into your concept. We can also offer the food service equipment package pricing, which I'm a food service equipment dealer, so I can supply all the equipment. I can also project manage it in collaboration with the GC, as a project manager. So, but on the other side of that, the additional services are the P&L, the feasibility study, the menu, that's a draft menu that you folks say at least, oh, we love this, or tweak this. So the development of the menu drives the more accurate P&L with the check average, with the seating, with the function sales, with the liquor sales, with the inventory and all of that. So now you have a package that you can even show an operator that you're interviewing and say, look, here's a whole package. Here's the instruction manual for the menu, and they might want to tweak the menu to some of their specialty pub things or whatever their chef likes, right? But it has to fit in the inventory and the food cost and the labor cost, which is the other component that we can add that I'm not sure a lot of other consultants can bring all of those pieces together with, the experience that we bring, so.
And your question's a difficult one to answer.
No, I understand.
Because we don't know what the it's all electrical and plumbing. It's really what it's gonna come down to. It would be outside of the building, the steel, whatever it's gonna be.
Yeah.
Our equipment package, I would build this, my gut, our piece, $1.2 million. If you're doing 2 floors, but that's not gonna include your elevator, that's,
No, so we have the base building. We don't have the fit out right now.
Yeah, and you could look at it like, they always say it's $300 to $400 a square foot. We could throw that number at you too.
And that includes miscellaneous supplies too,
Yeah.
like plates, tables and chairs and, I don't see any custom millwork in this, like banquettes or custom seating.
Again, part of the fit out.
Right, right, but we do the furniture in that as well, but, there's that little fork in the road with custom millwork and design. But, Paul said earlier, the kitchen exhaust system can be, a tough pill to swallow.
Yeah.
And if you have one concession kitchen, which it's, conservative on the equipment, but very versatile as far as production, because we can outfit a concession for a lot less than a full kitchen. A full kitchen might cost, $150,000 to $200,000 for the kitchen components, the walk-ins, the lockers, the food service office, if you will, all of those other, all of those parts and pieces, right? The concession may be $50,000, but that's enough to do the whole pub restaurant. Excluding the hood system, because we don't know the ventilation route yet, right, for the engineering. So with the engineering design for that, if they're all rooftop mounted with makeup and exhaust, can they tie in together? All that fun stuff. The refrigeration for the walk-in freezer, is it remote or self-contained? All those nuances, we can build that whole budget package for you with a conceptual plan that they have, which gives you folks a better understanding of what your kitchen package is. And again, with the operational and the feasibility study, you can just say, hey, are you interested with the marketing plan to an operator? And they'll say, wow, this is all done. All I have to do is hire the staff and, put my seed money down and sign the lease.
Yeah, we work conservatively so that you don't get the pie in the sky dreamer. I think is, that comes in and says, we need this, we gotta change all this, and then nothing ever gets done. We're very practical. I built up my own money in the bank, so I usually follow the steps of, hey, let's get all our ducks in a row first so that you don't have to deal with that.
What else? Bring it on.
Yeah,
I think that's good. That's helpful. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
Is that it? Well, these folks know where to find us. I believe you have our proposal, but again, it's kind of a spitball approach until you folks decide what you want, when you want it, and, how many phases you want to the scope. Okay?
Perfect.
When do you think this would come out to bid, or when do you think you would engage someone's services? As far as our piece, and/or maybe their piece?
I would guess November, December.
Okay.
Sure. So the appropriation would come in town meeting, and we would have to go out for an OPM first.
And then when do you suspect the project might kick off, once all those things are lined up?
Following that pretty quickly, I would think,
We have a Springtown meeting as well.
Yeah.
So I think if our goal would be to get a good overall number, final design numbers to go to town meeting in March to get approval. Because again, we're gonna have to go out. I think the goal here is that we build something out that, in the end, doesn't cost the taxpayers anything. So it's funded by the golfers, which we already know a portion. That's how it operates today for the pro shop. They pay their piece. I mean, again, it's still town-owned, but, and then the restaurant, our goal is to basically make between those two, the revenue that's generated, in essence, will pay for what we're gonna take on as debt to build an outfit. That's the goal.
Yeah.
So November selection process for your team, or so.
Yeah,
November,
it
December.
depends, right? Because we have to bring on an OPM, we have to go through that process, we have to negotiate that contract. So yes, that would be ideal.
PM.
An owner's project manager. Yeah, we're required to have that under.
Just a state law. I mean, someone
Yeah.
that basically represents us that
Yeah, sure.
knows trades better than
Would this potentially be a union job or
has,
non-union?
has to be.
No, prevailing wage.
Prevailing wage?
Yes.
Prevailing
Prevailing
wage versus union, what,
Doesn't have to be union. It's prevailing
It's
wage.
just
Prevailing
prevailing
wage.
wage. Yeah.
okay, sure. That's important to know for us going in as well.
But that's a question, that's why we talked too about public-private partnership and what came before, because if there's ways to work that, then it comes back to these. We're gonna pay, because we're a municipality and we have the prevailing wage laws, we pay top dollar to.
Would this be part of the GRO 35, like the Mass State bid contract, or is this not in association with any of that?
We
It's your
would
town?
we would go out separately with our own RFQ,
Okay.
if that's what you were asking.
Yeah, okay, all right.
Okay.
Well-
Thank you.
But I think again, the piece would be to get everything done, total costs, how we're gonna, build it out for March. Doesn't mean that we need an operator, we don't need,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
we need to
sure.
know the design
Understood, yeah.
costs, because when, the one thing we know to go to town meeting, we have to have solid numbers.
Yep.
Because we know it won't pass is if we don't have solid numbers. So that's why, we had originally talked about going to this October meeting to ask for it, and we know we're just not ready, and if you're not ready, the town just won't support it, because there's too many holes for them to punch in it, so we gotta go in solid numbers, this is where we're going, this is what it's gonna cost, get that approval, because that's what town meeting approves, any appropriation. And then that's when we start driving. So there's stages there, as you know.
Yeah.
Like I said, we're
Right.
not picking an operator,
But it would be
by
easier-
March, but we need
Right.
to know
In
what
the
we're doing.
end, once that whole marketing piece and menu and the food costs and the equipment plan is all kind of conceptually done, it might be easier for you to move that quicker along to generate revenue on that side once the shell is built.
Yeah, that's right. I would imagine that piece would be ready. It's going to be they'd be waiting for the construction to be done.
Sure.
So that's kind of the hope.
And that being said, Paul and I, and, working with these folks, we talked about, 3 to 5 week timing for us to put together the phase one. That would be working with one of their floor plans to put the conceptual equipment, food package cost together for you. And then the other parts below that, could be deleted off of our piece. But if you wanted the food service equipment package numbers and a conceptual layout and design to go to your presentation with, that portion can be broken out and done very quickly for you guys to start spitballing for your presentation. Perfect.
Yeah, I think this conversation is helpful for us to understand that would be part of the contract that we would want with the architect, so.
Yeah, and again, I think from our perspective, if you have that in your pocket for your next town meeting that shows them the equipment, shows them the concept with all the parts and pieces in the sandbox,
Yep.
maybe that might help, get a little more traction and people behind you for it. But
Yeah, it's hard to do it in pieces. If you don't have all the equipment and everything laid out on these plans together, whether it's us or someone else, it'll be very hard to keep control of.
Absolutely.
It'll be just this moving target that never ends.
Awesome.
Okay?
Thank you very
All right,
much.
thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank
you.
Yep.
nice to talk to everybody. And these guys you know where to find us, basically.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thanks.
Do we have anything else from BFE?
No, that was basically it. We've got a compiled kind of summary of all the documents that we've kind of shown over the time, and we've wrote up kind of an executive summary. We just the rough draft is all there, and all we got to do is kind of give it some proofreading and whatnot. So, but that's coming to you guys. Other than that's all from us.
Okay.
When would you expect to have that, Arthur?
Next week. Yeah, it's rough draft. I'm proofreading is going to be not a wordsmith, but
No, but we have all the drawings wrapped up and
Yeah.
the renders and it's just kind of putting together. a
Putting it
summary
together.
And getting you one complete package that wraps up all the work we've done and also has all the existing conditions of that original building in it.
Great.
Okay.
So, I know we've
Brian?
received a design proposal from them. I guess what you're saying now is we cannot, so it's not worth having them go through it at this point.
No,
Okay.
it's a quote,
Yep.
so that we can estimate our article. So if you're ready for that. So, so this was a feasibility study, so now we know the direction that we want to move in. And then now we need to ask for an appropriation that would fund an OPM, and then we have to go through the designer selection process, so similar to what we've done before. And we've received an estimate, so we can use that for our, to develop the appropriation, which it looks like it's maybe about $450,000 for OPM and design services. And but I did, so in talking to town council and bond council and our auditor and everyone, everyone is comfortable with moving forward so that this project would be fully funded under the Country Club Enterprise Fund. That would mean that all of the revenue from the lease payment, the restaurant, any sort of agreement that we set up in the future, everything would go into the enterprise fund and be paid out of the enterprise fund, which I think was really good news.
Doesn't go in general fund, doesn't go into taxpayer.
The challenge of that is that it would hit the general fund if for some reason the Country Club Enterprise Fund could not fund the debt service payment. So to what Rod was saying earlier, we need to understand what we think that revenue would be, and we really need to if the plan is to contain it within the enterprise fund, we need to make sure that we're designing towards that dollar amount, whatever we're comfortable with. So if we're looking at a $7.5 million project, just the principal payment on that alone is about $400,000 a year. So the country club already funds itself in terms of the golfers and its revenue with some money that falls to retained earnings. I think it's about $100,000 a year, maybe. So there's not a lot. Most of the revenue to cover the debt service payment has to come from this restaurant. And so I think as we move forward, we can absorb that borrow for the 450 so we can get started. And then as we're designing, we really need to think about the scale of that project and whether or not the enterprise fund is going to be able to support it. So I think we learned today that they can help us with all of those projections in terms of revenue sharing and lease payment expectations. But I just think that we're just going to have to be really cognizant of that as we're working on that design. So. And I guess the other piece of all of that is whether or not we are comfortable with, to what level we're comfortable with providing the equipment in the restaurant and what other things we're comfortable providing, because there is, I think it's a 4-pronged test related to, procurement and what can and cannot be like outside of those procurement laws based on your agreements with the operator. So we'll get into that more when we start to develop that, but it's something that we're going to need to really pay attention to because we'll be responsible for that, and the OPM would help us with that, I think, as well.
So, just to back up 1 second, I think 2 thoughts. One is, they shared their fee with me through Jim, and I thought it was reasonable. And so why do we have to have and obviously they'd have the ability to submit again. But what is can you describe the requirement that doesn't allow us to keep using them since town's already engaged?
Yeah, so actually, when you go back to even the conversations that we had with Peter Collins, he described the need for the OPM, and we talked about the feasibility study and the potential to have a feasibility study done first so that we would know what direction we were going to move in. That's the way that the committee chose to go. But you are required to bring an OPM on first, and then that OPM guides you through the designer selection laws. So we have to go out to RFQ for the design.
Okay.
With the OPM going out for that first.
Right.
So then, again, I think we as a committee need to understand, and Christy just pointed out, if the golf club or if the restaurant's giving us $150,000 and the golf club's giving us $100,000, that doesn't support a $7.5 million project. So,
right.
I think we as a town need to make sure we're designing towards a budget. And
Yep.
So it's not going to be easy to make the numbers work here.
Yeah, and just remember that $7 million is, if I think of what we've seen, that does not include restaurant equipment and all that piece. So.
It also doesn't include interest, and so in terms of when we're talking about with the
Yeah, I'm just saying 7 million.
Yeah. Well, I also think their estimate was very conservative. But that's
yeah. Well, and that's why we have to go into
Contingencies,
that phase.
whatever.
Yeah.
That's why we're going to this next phase to get
Right.
more detailed and.
Yep.
And I do like the piece of having the restaurant style come in, because it may be, as we've talked about, we don't know that, maybe that square footage is not what we need, and we can cut down. And as we cut down on that of course saves money.
Do we need to have a direction between the 2 options going into town meeting? Or I know their design fee really didn't matter, or is that part of the next phase as well?
Do we need to? I would say no. I mean, we might get the question, and I think, the answer could be that in looking at the feasibility study, the 2 options, as I recall, were not far. I mean, it's a couple $1 million off, and so we really need to go through the full design. But I think explaining our approach, which is to design to a number that can be covered by the enterprise fund, is probably the most relevant. But you never know what question you'll get at town meeting, as we all know.
I didn't know if there was any value to having this group vote in support of one of the 2 options.
Can't hurt.
Yeah. It's up to you.
I mean, if there's a consensus on the board that, you know, we're at the point where we can make a choice between renovating or building a new building, I don't see where it would hurt to take a vote on that.
Can we do that next meeting, or do you want to do it today?
No, I mean.
We're gonna have a meeting before
We're gonna have a
town
meeting
meeting, right?
before town meeting,
Okay.
yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just want to digest a little bit what I heard.
Okay.
So
All
that-
right.
I mean,
Yep.
I think I know which way I'm going, and we talked about it by do with
Okay.
hearing this. This was helpful today to hear some of this stuff, but there's things I got to digest because it's different than what I thought I'd hear.
Well, we do have a representative from the Historical Commission here, I believe. Is there anything you'd like to address with the group?
I don't think at this time, I mean, just,
You should.
Okay, you don't have to, I'm just giving you the option if you like.
you're listening and
Okay. Yeah, I think we can table it till the next meeting, and then, you know, we will take a vote on it at that time, definitely.
Sounds good.
Okay. Is there anything further on the country club? Okay, seeing none. Move on, rec center. Jen, you want to let us know what's happening? I believe you have some big news.
Hi, Jen Kirkland, the Recreation Director. Yeah, so we're officially in the building. As of last Wednesday, we moved in, and on Tuesday of this week, we opened to the public. We've had a few visitors, which has been good. I've been trying to show people around best I can. Yesterday, we had our first program. We had a senior center program, Strength and Balance, that's typically held at the senior center in their multipurpose room. They were able to use the exercise room. I think at first, you know, change is hard for everybody, but after the class, everyone was really excited and they want to continue to be there. I was able to give that group a tour. We have 4 or 5 guided tours set up that people are signing up for. They seem pretty popular, so I'll take them around the building and just kind of, ahead of town meeting, get people in the building to just kind of show them around, give them, you know, an idea of what the future is, you know, the next steps in the process. But it's been really good. And next week we start all of our rec programming. A lot of open gym time for kids. We're going to get the courts lined just with tape on the floor for pickleball. People are excited about that. We have a ton of exercise programs starting and a lot more. So we've been busy. It's been a lot of fun. It was nice to have people in the building yesterday. It's really good.
So you've completely moved out of this building, so if
Yep.
anybody needs the rec department, you were over on,
1500 Union Street,
1500.
second floor. We're working on some signage and trying to get people, but everyone's been able to find us, which is good. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun. It's been a good week.
awesome.
Yeah.
So I can just, for the building project, there's an article on the town meeting warrant. Right now, there's no number associated with that, but I think we're looking about 1.2 million for full design. The select board had a conversation about the approach, and I think we talked about that maybe at this meeting, but that it's a similar approach where we would just go for design money. It would be full design through bid documents. One of the things we talked about, if you've seen sort of the preferred design at this point, there's a lot of white space, with the idea being that that would be a future build out. And the design would be a full design of the building so that we would understand sort of the end goal. And then at that point, we could identify costs and phasing that we might want to do when we go for construction costs. So that's where we are at. That cost would include that full design through bid documents, additional public engagement, and the owner's project manager fee as well. I think that's it. So
Is that cost breakdown something you could share with this committee?
between the two, between the designer and the owner's project manager.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Definitely. I can share it with everybody. Yeah.
My only concern is, and again, I think it's important for us to town to design towards a budget. And the budgets I've seen, I think, are more than perhaps the town would support. So I just want to make sure we're designing the right project and spending the money in the most way that'll get the project done. So let me back up. So if I'm going to throw out round numbers, not saying they mean anything. Say it's a $15 million project, and the designer's fee is 8 or 10%. If it's a $10 million project, and the designer's fee is 8 or 10%, that designer fee is less. So I don't I'm not sure we want to pay for a designer fee for a project we can't afford.
Yeah, so the design, the architect's or quote is just under $1 million. And then the OPMs is the balance of that, so 300 and something thousand dollars. The design, the approach is to design the whole building, and then to understand, so that, because the concern is we have the building, and so one of the major sort of features of that building that we've talked about and moved around a lot in terms of the public engagement sessions and the different iterations of the design is, as an example, has been the where the second staircase and a second elevator is. While we expect, I think, to do phasing in the construction of this project, what we don't want to do is construct something in a spot where a future elevator is supposed to be, as an example. And so I think through public engagement, we'll identify, in the future where we would want this elevator, where we would want the second staircase, and make sure that when we are constructing, we're not constructing in a way where it would need to be torn out or redone. So I think the idea is to sort of see what the full goal is and then move back, to the phasing and to move forward. So I understand what you're saying, but I think I feel it's really important to design the entire building to what we want it to be, even if it takes us years to get there. So.
And again, I don't want to get into all the nuances, but you can schematically design the whole building and have bid documents for phase one. So I don't know if I don't think you need bid documents for the whole building,
Sure.
So you don't need a full design for the whole building. You need a full design for phase one and a schematic design for the rest of the building, just to make sure that, you don't run into problems like you're suggesting.
Yeah. I think we're trying to figure out what that phase one would be through the design. So.
Yeah, thank you, Kristen.
Who does the figuring for that? What committee or what board oversees that part of that?
At this point, because there's additional public engagement, we have the shell of the building and doing a lot of public engagement to understand exactly what it will look like. The select board is asking for the appropriation to move forward. And at the point at which the building, I think the board feels like the public has had sufficient engagement into the process, then it would be moved to this committee, is the expectation.
The select board, what committee would?
This committee.
This committee.
We'd finally get to look at something.
Yeah.
Well, you've all been included, so you have seen
No,
things.
it's not that I feel that way. I'm just saying the process seems to be on the side of everything. It's not right here. And yet we oversee, or should oversee, or we're supposed to oversee the construction and remodeling of all buildings. And that one right now has moved down the line a little bit, and we've not had no input. That's my only thought.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that we need to get involved in every nuance down there. I'm just thinking we haven't been involved at all.
It is different than the golf club building, but it's not that this committee has not been involved at all. So this committee was involved in helping choose the OPM, involved in helping choose the architect, was invited to separate discussions related to the design. So
As a committee, that's all.
And I know what you mean, but I just want, for the public, I just want to make sure that we are advising that there were touch points with this committee.
Yeah, and I think this was a call on the select board's piece, is right now, I think we're still taking public input. So we don't know, and Rod, to your piece, that's all stuff that we know to make this successful and do it. We need public input. We've had the sessions we've had, but as Christy said, even with this next phase, we know we need additional public input because I don't think we've gotten down to the level that we need to get to move this forward and know what we're going to do. So we've had a lot of discussions, but I'd say some of those discussions have been, just give me what we have today, and I'm not sure that's effective in terms of really thinking about what the potential is. So I think once we get a better idea from the select board side, of just saying, hey, this is what the community wants, and it's going to come to this committee to run with it. The select board doesn't want to run with it.
It's similar to the committee that we had prior to this one that talked about what what the community wanted the future use of that building, the golf club building, to be. And when they issued this report, it came back to this committee. This is obviously happening a little bit differently because it's such a big building, but it's similar. And I think when we first came to this committee, there was discussion about how this committee didn't feel like its role was to receive that public input and guide those sessions.
That, because that was under a separate committee, I would agree with that. We didn't want to be orchestrating all these groups to come in, but when we got that information, that's what I wanted, when we got that information, and that was good. We got the reports and the summations and all that. I just feel like this is, we, as a committee, have, yes, we've had reports, which is fine. I just don't know, we're going into more design, and then we have a designer, and then we have another designer. I mean, the guy that's designing, the people that are designing the use of that building now, when it comes to us, do we have to hire another designer, or is that guy move forward with us?
He can move forward.
Doesn't have to go out to bid.
No, because we started with an OPM and selected him through that
So-
process.
So, and I think what we've realized is that, again, and Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, but similar to this, is that we're not ready to go to town meeting this time because we're still in what I'd call feasibility in that building and trying to understand what the uses are. And I think to get that, but I do think as we move that, if we get funding, move to the next stage, I think it's close to coming to us because it goes to that stage. It's really, the select board's going to want to say, we don't need to be running on the day-to-day side of it. So I think there is that tipping point that this is going to come to this committee, and I'd say it's sooner than later in that process.
Well, the only part, and I've said it before, and I'm gonna say it again, this committee usually, and I may be wrong on this, but all the projects that I've been involved with, the committee brings on the OPM, the architect, and whatever design people. That's already been done.
And this committee had representatives that were part of that.
This committee as a committee has not seen that, that's all I'm saying. And when you sit in a committee and you hear presentations, you can ask questions as a committee level questioning. I'm just a little concerned that it's down, the train has already left a station down there, and then we're gonna come on board, and I don't want that. I don't know how to change any of that, and I'm not saying what's being done is wrong. I'm just saying, as what I'm used to, and however many years I've been here, it seems different to me.
Yeah, I think it is different. I think that's fair. Because when you design the fire station, or when we did the fire station building, or this building, or Forbes, or even the schools, there's a set program of use of that building. And similarly, when you were given the golf club project, there was a program for the building. This building doesn't have a set program. It could be anything. And so when the discussions that we had at this committee, when we first talked about it, was that this committee didn't want to be responsible with deciding whether there's an auditorium or a walking track or a golf
And I agree with
whatever.
all of that.
And that's not done yet. So I
Or the
think that's
town
what we're trying
voted
to
number
say.
one to make the whole bottom floor a turf field, indoor turf field.
Right.
That was the most,
So,
I don't
yeah.
think we're doing that, but that's what the public came
No,
with.
and I
And
understand
that's not-
that.
Yeah.
and
that's not
if they
done yet.
told- If they come to our committee and we hired an OPM and an architect and all that, one of the things that he'd be told is they want a turf field on the first floor. But other than that, I don't want to hear that this group wants a kitchen here and this group wants something over there. And I agree with all of that, and that's fine, but that's like a subcommittee, a investigation committee,
And that's how the select board's at.
like you did the country club, and
Yeah, and I think it is-
it came to us right, and we're hiring all the people to come in and do the design, the overseeing, and the actual building. And that's where this part of this process has taken place, in my mind, and I may be way wrong, and I've been wrong once or twice in my life. But, it's just my feeling. I mean, I'm not saying what's happening is wrong, it's just not what I expected, that's all.
Anything further on this?
No, I've killed it enough.
Chris, you had nothing else? or-
Actually, this may or may not be of interest to the committee, but just in terms of the move out of the recreation department, we are moving some of the offices around. So for those of you who were on the committee when we redid this building, we had 2 conference room spaces in this building. Currently, we have none. So now we are going to reclaim the conference room on the first floor, which has been acting as the finance director office. So that's really good. That conference room was previously used by lots of committees as well as staff during the day. So the finance or the town accountant who's in there, and then the folks in the accounting office are actually going to move up to the recreation office. And that will give us the opportunity to reclaim that conference room and then also allow IT to expand. I don't know if you've visited them, but they're pretty tight in there, and they also have an additional position which is vacant currently. So they'll be able to move right next door into the accounting office. And then we're actually moving the finance director, now that that's a separate position, up into my office area. So I think we're excited to have those conference spaces back for sure.
Are those conference spaces cable ready and everything?
No,
No.
I don't think so. They are? Even the little one? Oh, I was wrong.
Okay.
Yeah, they are.
So there's a possibility for some committees to run their meetings from those rooms also then, if they had to.
The big one
The-
downstairs.
yeah,
for
probably not the
sure.
small one, but the
small
big one.
is-
Right.
It's
As long
pretty,
as you pipe, like,
it's
4
really
people
small,
in it.
yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think you'd be running, yeah.
Okay.
Al, could I just make one?
Go ahead, Rod, yes.
At the hesitation to disagree with the chair, but now that the senior center portion of the community center is taking longer perhaps than anticipated, is it worth exploring putting the library in there as a temporary solution?
In the base state, or the
Yeah.
1500 space. I mean, I think it's it's an important conversation. I mean, this committee also doesn't do the library committee. That doesn't mean that there shouldn't be conversations about it. I agree with you. I mean, I think that there's opportunity. One of the other things that I've talked to the chair of the library building committee about is, the possibility of using existing sound space. Like, would the temporary library fit into the Great Hall, for example, for a period of time? Like, where is the opportunity to use existing space? So I think it's all part of the conversation. Maybe you want to put it on a future agenda and invite them to come in. I would want the select board to be aware of that conversation too.
Right. I am a representative on the library building committee, and we have put the RFQ out to see if there is some space available, but obviously we're going to have to pay for that.
Yeah.
It certainly would be preferable if we had something that the town already owns, so we could save substantial amounts of money there, not having to pay a monthly rent. So, Rod, it's a good suggestion. It's certainly something we can look at, but, I personally don't want to see us tie the hands of the town, having that tied up with a library and then not being able to move forward with the senior center. So it's certainly something we can look at, and, we can put it on a future meeting if you'd like.
Yeah, I mean, I think the select board has talked about that as well, and I think that initial conversations, because one of the select board members is on there, Sean Keogh's on the library building committee as well. The initial indications were they were concerned again about timing, but I think as you're saying to me, it's worth it. If we don't have to pay that money as taxpayers, that would be preferable. So I think finding town space, and that is potentially an option depending on the timing. And that was the other piece, is trying to understand the timing. They won't be going until, I think they're intending to go to March for funding to do the renovation.
Right.
But I think as they build that out to that point, part of that funding is temporary space, whatever that number is, and if that can be contained or removed because we're using town space, I agree. I think that's preferable. So we should continue that discussion.
Great suggestion, Rod.
You want to put it on the next agenda?
Yes, please. Okay. Anything further on that? I don't think we have anything for the Forbes at all for the closeouts or anything. There's nothing further discussed.
The board's going to consider something in executive session on Tuesday.
Okay, so there's our answer
Can-
for that. Hopefully at the
could-
next meeting,
Could we go into executive
No.
session to?
no, not today.
Oh, for this committee?
Yeah, just to hear what the plan is?
I would say no, because there's nothing before you.
Yeah, I prefer to wait till, the next meeting if you want to,
And actually, we don't have it on the agenda.
right, it's not on the agenda today, so
We can't go
we
into
can't go into
executive
executive
session.
session.
We
But
talked
cer-
about it last time.
We can put it on for the next meeting, for potentially going into executive session.
But if you don't have anything, if there's no action for this committee to take, then there's
Right.
no purpose for executive session.
Well, I guess, and I wasn't involved, so but this is the group that oversaw the construction. I think the opinion of this group might be important if there's a settlement that needs to be made. Maybe you're getting that input outside of this meeting, but, again, I don't know what I don't know, so I'm just.
I'll be honest, I don't know what we don't know, because we won't hear it till
Okay.
then, but.
So, I mean, we
Let's-
certainly, we could put it on the agenda for the next meeting, potentially for executive session, but we don't have to go into it if there's nothing to
Yeah.
discuss.
Yeah, and I can bring that to the select board as a representative on this committee.
Okay,
For
you know,
that meeting on.
We certainly would like to be apprised of
Tuesday.
what's happening, and obviously
Yeah,
Ian can.
I just think, this group, and not even including me, but, you have people here who have construction experience, who have dealt with issues on construction projects.
Yep.
There may be a role for the people in this committee to give input, and I don't know, just, if there is.
I mean, just so we're clear, there has been lots of discussion. Jim's been a part of them. Cal
Yeah.
has been a part of them. Our OPM for that project has been a part of it. So ultimately, yeah, I think that there's been good input into where we're at. So.
Okay, thank you.
I think that's all we have on the agenda. Set the next meeting date. I'm going to be away on the 10th, which will be our next scheduled. Is everybody available for the 17th?
When's town meeting?
That'd be after town meeting.
No, town meeting's the
21st.
Oh, sorry,
21st.
21st.
Yeah.
That's right.
So is the 17th agreeable with everybody?
What day is it?
That's a Thursday.
Okay. Yeah, I'm good on Thursdays.
Jimmy?
Let me just check. Yes, I'm available.
Okay, so the next meeting will be October 17th, 8 AM, hopefully in this room here. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Okay, second. Any discussion? No? All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you.